do EFG? No. And what? Yeah, you did them yesterday, but you have not seen the right answers to E, F, and G. And nor have you seen any of the right answers to the ones I wrote on the board, but I forgot to copy them down. So unless one of you did, I can't really help you. There's only one I remember. Good, thank you. There's only one I remember, and that's the one I definitely want to go over because unless you are harsh... Huh? Yes. Did I show you the quadratic formula last year? Last year. Oh, see, I didn't want you to do that. That's okay. Okay. All right. So, of course, obviously, this is isolate the radical. But, of course, you might want to take care of your restrictions first. 5a must be greater than 5. A must be greater than or equal to 1. So 5a minus 5, root 5a minus 5 equals, that comes over there, and we get plus 8 equals 5. Then, of course, we square both sides. 5a minus 5 equals 25. 5a equals 30, and a equals 6. Is 6 greater than 1? Yes, Manroot?
The word, but not the limitations. I think that's not right.
Okay. Well, let's just finish this first. Then, of course, you check. 5 times 6 is what? 30 minus 5 is what? Square root of 25 is what? Negative 8 plus 5 is negative 3. So it's right. Now, again, restrictions. The square root of anything negative cannot exist. Okay? You cannot have a square root of a negative number. They don't exist. Which means you cannot have the square root of anything under that radicand that is negative. So that means that 5a minus 5 can never be negative. So that expression must always be greater than or equal to 0. Always. It can't be negative. Then you just do algebra. If you don't remember how to do inequalities, I asked every time I've done this, I've said, how many people need me to go over inequalities? And nobody has put their hand up. So I'm going to try again. How many people need me to go over inequalities? All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, your and my lives will be easier if we cut the horse crap. This is the 8th or 9th or 10th one of these we've done. After the very first one, I asked if you were all okay. Why would you not say it then? Those of you that understand inequalities, you may turn your brain off right now and mind your business for the next few moments. Those of you that had your hand up, you must watch. 5x minus 5 equals 0. How would you solve that for x? Go. 5x equals 5. Now what? Divide by 5. X equals 1. Right? Okay. Then, how would you check that? You would put it here. 5 times 1 minus 5 equals 0. 5 minus 5 equals 0. 0 equals 0, and it's done, right? How many answers are there to that question? 1. And that answer is the number 1. So if I were to draw that on a number line, There is number 1. That is the only number that works here, correct? All right. 5x minus 5 is greater than or equal to 0. Now, what does this mean in English? That means whatever is on this side has to be bigger than 0. All right? Or equal to 0. So, if I made x 1, 0, is 0 equal to 0? So 1 is an answer here. But there are more answers than that. Because what if I used 2? What is 5 times 2? 10 minus 5 greater than or equal to 0. What's 10 minus 5? 5. Is 5 greater than or equal to 0? So that means 2 is another answer. What about 3? What about 4? How long will that continue? Forever, because there is an infinite amount of answers to this question. But those answers do not include any of the numbers lower than 1. Because 5 times 0 minus 5 is negative 5. Is negative 5 greater than or equal to 0? No. So on a number line, all of these numbers up to infinity that are greater than or equal to 1 will work. All right? So all you do is regular algebra. So if I told you 6x minus 8 had to be greater than or equal to 0, 6x had to be greater than or equal to 8, x had to be greater than or equal to 4/3. Would the number 2 work? Is 2 greater than 4/3? Yes, so would the number 2 work? Would the number 1 work? No. Everybody good? All right, so that's the theory behind inequalities. Now, there's a problem with them because all of you see, so far I've looked at that and said, okay, I get it. It's the exact same as algebra, except it isn't. If I did 6x, negative 6x minus 12 was greater than or equal to 0. If you do regular algebra, you get negative 6x is greater than or equal to 12. Then x is greater than or equal to, you divide that by negative 6, and you would get negative 2, right? Everyone agrees, right? If you do regular algebra. Okay, so now pick some number greater than or equal to negative 2. Hint, use 0. 0, good choice, everyone. So, x equals 0. Is 0 greater than negative 2? Okay, what's 6 times 0? What's 0 minus 12? Is negative 12 greater than or equal to 0? No. So, whenever you do any division or multiplication of a negative number, you must flip that sign. All right? Now, I take 3 lessons to do this in the 9th grade. That's the quick version. Is everybody good? Okay. Over here, you may want to check your restrictions right away. Negative 3m plus 10 has to be greater than or equal to 0. Now, some kid always says, how can I have a negative under the square root sign? You just told me you can't have a negative under the square root sign. But if m is a negative number, then won't that make this positive? Right? So you still have to check, because what isn't allowed to be negative is the whole kit and caboodle. Okay? The entire radicand cannot be negative. So we go through our business here. Negative 3m has to be greater than or equal to negative 10. Divide by negative 3. Once I divide by negative 3, I got to flip the sign. 10/3. Any answer I get, for it to work, has to be less than 10/3, which is 3 1/3, yes? So what if I did all this work and I found the answer was m equals 4? No good. No answer to the question because 4 is bigger than 10/3. Everybody with me? Okay. Now let's do the work. Of course, root negative 3m plus 10 has to equal m minus 4, right? Because I brought that over here. Yeah? Now, I've got my radical isolated. What should I do? Square it. I like to square with a different color to remind you to do both. And some of the kids in my other class are still telling me that the right-hand side here is m squared minus 16. Still. This is my war face. Don't do that. It embarrasses you and me because a great many of you have been in my class for 2 years. If you still to this day cannot understand that that is a base and that is m minus 4 times m minus 4, I am going to give you a 1,000 question worksheet that is all that. Because that side is m squared minus 8m plus 16. Right? And all of you wrote that. Right? Not one of you would have the audacity to tell me that this was m squared minus 16. Right? Of course you wouldn't, because you've been taught well and you paid a solid amount of attention to said teachings over and over and over again. Right? Right. Just to quote the crazy chick from iCarly, that's always m minus 4 times m minus 4 forever and ever and ever. If you don't get that gag, do yourself a favor, get some old iCarly episodes because it's comedy gold. This side is, of course, just negative 3m plus 10. Then, of course, you say to yourself, self, I see like terms. I've been through grade 9 math in BC. Whenever I see a like term, what do? I collect them. So, would I move all of this stuff this way? That would be silly talk, because then I would be making a negative. Yuck. So we're going to leave them here. Plus 3m. What is 3 minus 8? Negative 5m. Then I would bring this over here. What is 16 minus 10? 6. And then because I've done grade 10 in BC, as soon as I see a trinomial, I attempt to factor it. If it's a trinomial with no leading coefficient, I know that I need two numbers that multiply to 6 and add to negative 5, which are negative 2 and negative 3. Now, often, because the new thing in grade 11 is that's not the answer. That is simplified. The answer is what is going to make this multiplication give me 0. The shortcut that you all immediately follow as soon as you see it, m equals 2, m or 3. Right? But of course, if you only followed a shortcut, then if I gave you something like this, 2x minus 4, not minus 4, minus 1, and x minus 3, you might make the mistake of saying that answer is 3 or 1. But that would be wrong, wouldn't it? because this would have to equal 0. So 2x would have to equal 1, so x would have to be 1/2. Now, the more astute members of the class that are able to catch these patterns would see the sign still changed, and it was just the 1 divided by 2. If you have learned the way I factor, you know that when this was expanded, at some point I had x minus 1/2, didn't I? Why would I teach you that slidey factory thing in grade 10? Oh, because look, in grade 11, doesn't that look a lot like that, where all you had to do was change the sign? Was I planning ahead? Yeah. All of you that fought me on this, I hate that method, I don't want to use it, I can't do it. And I said, it will help you later, but you don't have to. What did you do? Didn't listen. Now, are both of those numbers less than 3 1/3? So they are both possible. Do they both work? I don't know. What's negative 3 times 2? What is negative 6 plus 10? What is the square root of 4? 2. Is 4 plus 2 2? No. So does 2 work? No. So what do we call that root that we have found that is not a real root? Extraneous root. Now let us check 3, cabbages. What is negative 3 times 3? Negative 9. What is negative 9 plus 10? 1. What is the square root of 1? 1. What is 4 plus 1? 5. Does 5 equal 3? No. Home Alone face.
Wait, I think I just lacked something, but how did you get 3 on the other side of the equal?
M. They both have to equal 3. Okay? So, is there an answer to this question? No. And lastly, this one is the hardest one by a mile. 1.6 kilometers, which of course you knew because you were in my grade 10 class and we did measurement. Have any of you seen? No, you haven't, because it's an old person one. There's this thing on Facebook, which is like our version of MySpace, which is your grandparents' version of Instagram. On Facebook, there's this chart, how to measure things like a Canadian. It's very funny, because it's like, if it's really, really far, you use miles. But if it's close, you use kilometers. If it's your height, you use feet and inches. But if it's a building, you use meters. If it's your weight and it's a little bit, you use pounds. But if it's a really big weight, you use kilograms. It's a very funny little flowchart thing that you would get if you'd been in Math 10 with me, because we did a whole unit on conversions like that. And I do that whole big thing about how I hate that we're stuck beside America and we do so many things in the stupid way of measuring. But we're stuck with it. If you're American and you like imperial, it's the 21st century. Grow up. Okay? All right. Now, you have 2 options here. If I presented you with this, what would you do? You would distribute. So, could you distribute here? Which would give you root x times what? Root x minus 7. Which would get you the root of what? X squared minus 7x. Barf! Right? That's a pain. But we could do it. All right. So I gave you 1. What if I gave you this? Yes? What if I gave you this? 3x minus 7 equaled 12. Now what could you do with that? Wait, I lie. What if I gave you that? What would you do? What would you do? You would divide by 3, yes? Okay. So what would you do now? Same thing. And get x minus 7 equals 4. Right? You may not do that, but you could do it, yes? So, could we not isolate this radical by dividing by root x? What would happen right there? Cancel, and I'd get root x minus 7, yeah? And what would that equal? 12 over root x, yes? Now, you're intelligent young people. Are my radicals isolated? I should get rid of one of them, shouldn't I? Does it matter which one? Not really, but I like to get rid of the more complicated one first and watch what happens. Square, square. X minus 7 equals 144 over x. It took care of both of them in one shot, didn't it? Yeah? Now what would you do? What bothers you there? I see 2 x's. Which x bothers you? The fraction x, yes? How do I get rid of a fraction? Multiply by the denominator. Cancel. 2x squared minus 7x equals 144. Yeah? X squared minus 7x minus 144 equals 0. And it is, of course, x plus minus 16. X plus 9. X minus 16. And what are my 2 possible options now? Negative 9 and positive 16. And then we go check. Can negative 9 work? Why not? Because couldn't that be negative 9? No. So we know without even doing anything, it's out. Let's check 16. What is the square root of 16? 4. What is 16 minus 7? 9. What's the square root of 9? What's 4 times 3? 12. So what's right? Yay, Manroop. Yeah, I agree. I know. I'm well aware of that. But this works too. This builds on your previous knowledge of algebra, which, if I've learned anything in my 20 years of teaching, is something every single one of you needs to build on. All right. Now, the one I wanted to talk about specifically was this one. It was the square root of q squared over 2 plus 11 equaled q minus 1. Because unless you're from another country or you went and saw Mr. Duidoff, this one gets to a point where you're stuck. Right? But are you stuck now? No, you don't get stuck until almost the end of the question. Everything else still works. Now, my mistake was I was choosing questions at random because I was just trying to get stuff on the board because I knew I wasn't going to be here the next day, and I accidentally gave you one that didn't work, and I feel bad about it. So, of course, is this isolated already? So, of course, you square both sides. And you get q squared over 2 plus 11 equals q squared minus 2q plus 1. Now what bothers you? That 2. So you multiply this side by 2, you multiply this side by 2. To get q squared plus 22 equals 2q squared minus 4q plus 2. Then you collect your like terms. Q squared minus 4q equals, not equals, you idiot, plus, not plus, you idiot, minus 20 equals 0. And if you get there, you're stuck because this doesn't factor. Now, I would like to show you q squared minus 4q equals 20 is another thing I could have here, couldn't I? And that would be q and q minus 4 equals 20, yes? It's another way to factor it. But either way, if you're in the black or in the red, you still are stuck. You don't know what to do there unless you're Jose, Valkyria, Harsh, Dewey-Doff visitors, maybe Kai knows what to do there. And that would be it. Oh, he went. You know what to do there. Right? No, you know what to do there. Yeah, he knows what to do there. He does. Trust me, he does. As soon as I show him, he'll be like, oh yeah, of course, dummy. Don't worry. All right? If in this unit, on your test, and now I have to go back and make sure I haven't done it, if it doesn't factor, just stop. In 3 or 4 lessons, you're all going to know what those 5 kids know. Okay? So don't worry about it. I'm 99% sure I didn't screw this up because I've been very careful making this because I didn't want to show you what to do next. Okay? Because what to do with the rest of this is much more useful in our next unit. And if I show it to you now, when we get to our next unit, you'll be like, oh, what was that again? And you'll forget it all and have to reteach it anyway. Okay? Everybody cool? All right. So that is where you would stop because you can't factor it. All right? All right. Now, of those questions I gave you on the board yesterday, were there any other than that one that you were like, damn, I don't know what to do with this. I'm stuck. All of them you should have been able to get to the answer. Madison, hit me. Well, tell me what it is. Remember, I erased them. You could just read it, but okay. I like to get my steps in too sometimes. Did the root cover all of the, or was it 5 root x over 2?
That, yeah.
It was this, 5 root x over 2, equaled what? Root 200. Okay, so I would isolate this radical, yeah? How do I get rid of that divided by 2? Times 2 times 2. So now I've got 5 root x equals 2 root 2. And this was something that was on the board yesterday. Now what? Now what? Square both sides. What does that give me on the left? 25x. What does that give me on the right? 4 times 200, which is, of course, 25x equals 800. Now what? Divide by 25, and x equals 32, I believe. Yeah. It's 32. And then we check. how do we check? We go back to here. I'll change colors. 5 root 32 over 2 equals root 200. Yes? Well, what would you do with that? We've done our radical unit. What do you do with that? I heard Crystal just muttering it. Oh, okay. Well, that is 16 times 2, isn't it? Right? So what would come out? 4. What's already there? So I got 20 root 2 over 2 equals, that is 2 times 100, yes? What's coming out? 10 root 2, right? Square root. I heard you say 10. I don't know. I'm old, right? Like, I could have sworn you said 25, but you never would have said that. Obviously, you said 10. I'm so old. I hear you. Or do I? What happens here? Does 10 root 2 equal 10 root 2? It does in my universe, so it's done. Right? So 32 is the right answer. Yeah? Don't be scared by weird looks, right? When I come in here on Halloween, I'm not going to look like me. You don't need to be scared. It is still me. Okay? I'm something different every year. But it's always a cartoon character. Last year I was Fred Flintstone, yes. But I left my hair gray because 6 or 7 years ago, I dyed my hair for Halloween instead of getting a wig, because if you're going to commit, you should commit. And then the punk-ass grade 11s that year said very mean things on YouTube. Yeah, because they were such D-bags. So, and of course they were anonymous D-bags, the worst kind of D-bags. Those kind of candy asses that are like XQ, or Speedy Wheels says blah. And it's anonymous. Like, if I want to tell you that I think you're a chump, I'll just say you're a chump, because I'm not a candy ass. But everybody on the internet, because you don't have to put your real name, is a giant screaming pile of wussy poo. Right? If you had to put your real name, maybe you wouldn't be as, trolly as people are. Or if you had to actually go to the person and say it. Nobody wants to do that. Unless you're Andrew Scheer. But he's an idiot too, so who cares? Huh? No, because I don't live in Quebec where Trudeau's riding is. I would be voting, if I were voting Liberal, I would be voting for Kelly Valonis, who is the Liberal candidate in my riding. You do not vote in Canada for the leader of the party. The only people that get to vote actually for Trudeau are the members of the Liberal Party. I am not a member of any party. Sadly, people forget that in Canada and think that you are voting for, like in America, the president. You will notice that that is making Canadian politics really awful, because it's making it like American politics, where all you do is stand up on a soapbox and call your opponent names. And the better person that calls more names, the bigger bad word, unintelligent bully, because you can't come up with anything real to say, you just call them names. The guy who can call the other guy better names wins the election in the United States, as is evidenced by the fact of who won their last election. Right? And as is evidenced by the fact, when asked what characteristics show a good leader, Andrew Scheer said nothing about characteristics that show a good leader. He called Justin Trudeau a bunch of names, like a schoolyard bully. Which, in reality, if we were an intelligent electorate, would say, that guy didn't answer the question. He just called him a bunch of names. What are we supposed to do with bullies who call us names? Ignore them and walk away. In your new quiet, like, oh, I love everybody world. In the real world, you punch them in the mouth and they stop calling you names. Right? But nobody did that. See, Andrew Scheer was smart, even though he's an idiot, a homophobic idiot, racist idiot, racist, poorist. By poorist, I mean P-O-O-R-I-S-T, because he hates poor people. That's what he really is. But what he proved that he was actually really smart, because now, today, every newscast is replaying the clip of him saying, Mr. Trudeau, you're a phony and you don't deserve to govern our country. Even though he didn't have anything intelligent to say, that's what's getting repeated. Because the media in our country is as stupid as we are, and we buy into this, bullies deserve to win. If you watch the rest of the debate, you would hear that the only person more unintelligent than Andrew Scheer in that debate was Maxime Bernier. And the scary thing about that is he was within 2% of being the conservative leader, which meant he would have been the leader of a real party, not a bunch of crackpots. And then he would actually have a chance of forming the prime minister or forming the government. Fortunately, the Conservatives managed to keep him out and got somebody who was only slightly less homophobic, racist, and poorest when they got Andrew Scheer. Back to math. Were there any other questions from the board yesterday that I left with Miss Craig? I like how when I phoned Miss Craig, she didn't answer the phone. What did she say to you guys?
Nothing. She said nothing. She said nothing.
Yeah. Madison. No, I would do them right now because I don't have them in my head. My head was full yesterday of things that were more important to me than math. Crystal. Whoa, Crystal. Whoa, I didn't know you were going to start dictating. Give me a minute. Jeez. -5. I know, but -5. That one? That's funny. Oh, because I did remember that one. I had it written right here, but I had to erase it for my grade 10s earlier. All right, it looks scary, but is it? Of course not. What should you do? First of all, x cannot be what? No. This is easy. You should be able to see it by looking at it. X cannot be what? Any positive number. Why, Lennon? Because then it would be negative under the radical sign, right? X must be less than or equal to 0. So let's go. So if I were doing this question, I would move this over here to get rid of that negative. Right? So I would have root -6x equals, then I got to move that over there to become positive, would equal 7. Yes? Then I've got my radical isolated, so it doesn't matter what it looks like, I square it. -6x equals 49. That looks like a grade 5 algebra question. X equals 49 over -6, yeah? And when you get there, you are all going, no, can't be. Can't possibly be that. We've always had it be a regular number. It cannot be that. But it is that, right? It says x equals that. So what do? We check. If that's x, I'm putting it there, aren't I? So I would get -5 equals 2 minus the root of -6 times 49 over -6, right? What happens to those two -6's? Gone. Right? -6 over -6. What's left under the radical? What's the square root of 49? So that is 2 minus 7. Does 2 minus 7 equal -5? Does in my world. Ashneet. Okay. So what are you asking me, Preston? No, sorry, man. I got nothing. All right. Do we feel we're good? Okay. So now I can't remember. Did I tell you to do page 69 and 70 first? No, I said that's what we're doing today. Yes? All right. Now listen. The other class has lobbied very vehemently, speaking of political processes, has lobbied very vehemently to have your cumulative exam next week after the 3-day weekend. Now, stop, I'm still talking. They lobbied to have it, they wanted it on Tuesday, which for them would have been the very first block. And when I pointed that out, they said, no, can we have it Wednesday? And I said, all right. Which means you people would have your cumulative next Wednesday, August 16th, in the second block, which is right before lunch. So if you run out of time, you could bump into lunch. Why? Because my Grinchy heart is 2 sizes too large. Now, what this means, however, though, is this unit is done right now on Tuesday. It will probably take most of the rest of the class to do this equations assignment, which means we would mark it tomorrow, which is Wednesday, which means we have Thursday and Friday of this week. I would still like to write your radicals test, your polynomials test, the third unit test, this week, which logically makes sense to do it on Friday, so you have the entire 80 minutes. I would like to tie up all of the units that are mostly review before Thanksgiving. Everyone is amenable to that? That is a good compromise? I mean, you're not incredibly happy because you have to write a test on a Friday. I'm not incredibly happy because I wanted the cumulative done before Thanksgiving. So it's a good compromise because I'm not 100% happy, you're not 100% happy, but it is going to work. A good lesson for our soon-to-be minority government. Those of you that have been paying attention to my previous rant today know why I just said what I said. Alrighty? Excellent. Wait, I also discovered that in this book, for some reason, these 2 questions are not printed. They should be at the very end. Yes. So, well, you're welcome to put it on the next blank page, Crystal, because you've got like 4 pages of blanks here. Now, the other thing, ladies and gentlemen, see this question? For some reason, this caused much grief and much weeping and gnashing of teeth in the other class. All this is saying is I don't need you to do all 3 of these down to x equals. Because you should be able to look at those, and in your head, you should be able to say which, if any, of those 3 has an extraneous root. Okay? It might be 1, it might be 2, it might be 3. If you can't do it, listen to me. It will cost you 1 mark. Do you think that matters? Do not waste your time for 1 mark solving these 3 things, because that's a buttload of work to do for 1 mark. If you don't get it, accept that you don't get it, and when I show it to you, learn it. Because even though I haven't specifically shown it to you, we have talked about the reason why you know one of those won't work. Okay? Go.